Go ahead.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Between Two Teachers for this Friday, June 2nd episode. And we are in vacation time, so we're going to have some conversations about different topics that are coming up and rising to the top. So my name is Consuelo Lara.
And I'm Madeline Cronenberg. And as always, we greet you from the land of the Chochenyo Korkan Ohlone people. And I will read our land acknowledgement. We pause to acknowledge that we have gathered on the ancestral territory of Huchun, part of the unceded land of the Chochenyo and Korkan speaking Muwekma Ohlone people. We remember their continued connection to this region, give thanks to them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland. And we offer respect to their elders and all Ohlone people, past and present. That is our recognition of our ancestors. Lots and lots is going on in education right now, especially nationally. And that's sort of what we're going to focus about today. And the issue that is rising to the top in education is critical race theory. Critical race theory is on the cover of magazines. It's on the cover of newspapers. There are websites. There's like at least 165 new organizations that are formed, that have been formed recently regarding it. And it's become a trigger word to a lot of American families.
Right. And let me give a little bit of context and background. I think, I believe that this is coming forward because we're actually seeing some success with, looking at bias, looking at equity, looking at people, police roles, and people are really making change and looking at this as serious issues and trying to make changes for the good, for the better. And I think that this is a reaction to that. So the reactionary people are trying to find something that they can use. And really this comes because I believe the murder of George Floyd really brought it home how much work this country needs to do around this issue, and people were taking it seriously. And there was so much, support in this area in a positive way. But of course, the people who are very reactionary come out and they co-opt a lot of these things that are happening. And that's what these organizations are doing, right?
This became, it was a perfect storm in a number of ways, right? So the term critical race theory, everyone is now learning, is an academic term that was used in higher education, has to do with these different strategies that were used to push systemic racist policies. But the easiest one to understand is redlining. Redlining kept people from living in certain places, and because of redlining laws that existed throughout the United States, African-American families were kept from being able to grow to the income levels that white families are able to grow into. So that's what critical race theory refers to. But the term sort of has been conflated, I believe, in this year of learning to move forward with social justice teaching and all of the issues around social justice, and all of the teachers across America who are looking for ways to explain what the changes are in our country, and explain movements that really were very much started by all of the folks who went out into the streets to demonstrate for social justice after Mr. Floyd's death. That training, there was never really any training specifically, or enough training given to our teachers to be able to go into a classroom and explain things to our children around where we are as far as social justice goes, and explain where we are in terms of the inequities in our system, and what is racist, and what racism means, and what anti-racism means. And so what's happened now is that we have families who have seen this training and looked at it as being something that is hurtful to their children. And that's the key. That is where we are. You can see that in these issues that these school boards are looking at, and where they're saying we don't teach. They're saying we don't teach critical race theory.
Right. And the thing of it is that what happened this last year, because of the pandemic, because of witnessing these injustices, the conversation has just started, really in terms of education, because the teachers, I always say this, you can't expect, okay, we're going to talk about race for, teachers. That's you can't expect that. That's a difficult thing to do. And so we started with little baby steps. There was professional development, implicit bias, and you got to start small and build your ability to deal with these issues. Nobody wants to just rush into that. So that the idea that teachers are teaching this is so, it's just so difficult. So I don't know, they're just going to the extreme and building this fear and the trigger words, right?
Right.
So, yeah, that's what's happening.
And what's happened now is that it's become totally politicized, so that you have organizations. There's something like 162 organizations that have formed against critical race theory, right? And it's also something that's happened, and we have to give it the context of happening during the pandemic and COVID, and families also becoming very concerned about their children returning to school full time, because most of these organizations that formed started as that. And then the critical race theory, the social justice conversation got added to that, right? They were angry to begin with, and they were frustrated. They were dealing with all of the consequences of the pandemic. They formed organizations. These organizations then have also been seen by the Republican Party as an opportunity for them in the culture wars, as they call them. And they see themselves as winning this part of the war. And so the consequence of that is they have put money into these organizations, or into some of them. They have made it easy for you to start an organization, and they've made it easier to focus on school board elections. So that they're now doing things like, there's an organization called the 1776 Project, which is very well funded, and that asks you to report a school promoting critical race theory, and they will then take action against that teacher or that school. They also are requiring that school board members or people running for school board take a pledge against critical race theory.
Oh, geez, that's the money issue is really important there. How they can use and where that money's coming from. That's really important to look at, because we know it's, like we said, the usual suspects in terms of what. And you're right. They just seem like, oh, here's something we can jump on and use for that.
Right, and they're not. This is, from that perspective, it's very public. Right, there's a guy named Jim Banks in Congress. He's written, he does the Republican Study Committee. So he's a Republican strategist, political strategist. He's the one who sent out to his members, and members of the Republican Party who are in Congress, a memo explaining the talking points they should use, and that they are winning this battle in the public view. So that is where we are. And it really is something we have to keep looking at. But in Idaho, I was fascinated by this. The more I looked at it, the more I went down the hole and said, this is growing at an incredible pace. There's a woman who's the lieutenant governor in Idaho, Janice McGeachin. And Janice McGeachin has started an education indoctrination task force, statewide task force. And what she's looking at is essentially not having any in what she calls indoctrination around social justice, what we would call social justice, right? There are many states now that are looking at banning the 1619 project so that the perspective has to stay where it always has, and as an Anglo perspective on history. And all of that is going to be very damaging to our kids. Anyway, and this is the battle that's being fought today that really wasn't there 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Right? But has evolved.
And gosh, it also reminds me of the push to the voting suppression, how that's grown, and how I think every state now, they said, has something. It almost seems their campaign is so successful. They're getting organized. Oh my gosh, it's we got to keep an eye on it. We got to keep talking about it.
Right. We have to keep talking. We have to keep talking about it. That we can't allow an effort to demonize teachers once again.
Right.
And really say that, one of the things that the state of Nevada is looking at is putting body cams on teachers while they're teaching.
This is amazing.
In order to catch them. Why do you put a body cam on somebody? Well, either you're just a voyeur and want to follow them around all day, or you're trying to catch them doing something wrong, which is what they are saying. And they're trying, what is this wrong thing that they would be doing? This isn't to make them better teachers, right? Which is what people have done before, where you actually wore something while you were teaching a lesson and somebody came back and critiqued the lesson.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's been done for years. You didn't invent anything with that, but a body cam to make sure you're not slipping anything in.
That's creepy.
That's social justice. That's what they're talking about.
Oh dear.
Right?
Okay.
So anyway, that's, if you're interested in the link below, I've linked to a lot of the growing conversation around it. The organizations, one of these organizations is called Parents Defending Education. Another one is No Left Turn.
Oh, gee.
And the other one is the 1776 Project. And as they say there's over 162 and growing, because communities across the country are looking at all of this. And another one, these names that you have communications experts coming up with the names. One of the names is Free to Learn.
Oh, gee.
That's a big one. That's one of the big ones. So
right.
That's that for right now. So that's, keep an eye on it. It's everywhere, and we'll be continuing to talk about it, because we really do need to look at a way to see who are the success stories here, who is framing this conversation in a way that's fair and that can move our country forward.
And also exposing, these groups and
Right.
the money, and for the paper trail and the money trail, all of that, keeping that in mind. This is who you're listening to, and this is what this is about. Well, we want the truth in history. Really, that's what we want. We want inclusion, because a lot of people have been left out in history. We want to include them in history.
We just want to know it. We want to know it right now, so that our children don't make the same mistakes. Right. And that's really what we want to say to our children. We don't want you to make these mistakes. We want you to know these mistakes were made in the past. People did things that were really not right at all. And they've made a lot of mistakes. And what you have to do is find ways to mitigate them and to fix them. So we'll continue on that conversation.
Right.
What else was I going to talk about? The other things are reopening. I wanted to give a shout out to West Contra Costa. They are doing a lot in terms of letting people know what the reopening is going to be like. They've created a whole strategy around giving out reopening information, and a strategy around doing dialogues with parents and students throughout the district and finding out what it is they want. So that if you have a message in the past, and I think in most places, there isn't as clear a process to get your wishes or your thoughts to the board, or to actually not to the board necessarily, but to the administration who can do something about it. And right now there is a really clear path. So I think people are feeling heard, because the process is there for people to feel heard.
Yeah. And our emphasis about collaboration through communication, First gets an A+ in that area. He is communicating and building trust. He's working on that for sure, and keeping an equity lens on everything. Doing those
Exactly.
things, it looks good so far. Yes, very pleased.
Exactly. So that's been a really good thing.
Yes.
What else is I going to talk about? Just very briefly. Oh, I did want to talk about Florida.
Oh, yeah.
So Florida has, they are also totally into this whole conversation around critical race theory. And of course, the governor is going to make it illegal to teach it. So there's that. But there's a person in Florida who ran, he was running for office and actually was on a school board. And the school boards in Florida, they're just by county. So there are only 12 school boards in Florida. And his name is Billy Townsend. And Billy Townsend was a writer, a newspaper reporter, an investigative reporter before he got on the school board. And when he got on the school board, he was very critical of a lot of things, certainly also of the charters movement in Florida. They then, in his re-election campaign, called him public enemy number one, and put billboards all over the county to defeat him. And they did defeat him. But they didn't take him out. They moved him, for he's not on the school board anymore. So he now has a blog called Public Enemy Number One. Right. And he is a very thoughtful writer about what's going on in Florida. So I'm going to put a link to his blog in here. I think he is an amazing writer. He's written books on the history of Florida. He understands it. He explains it. And he is also very much on top of everything that's happening in terms of social justice issues in Florida and just privatization issues in Florida. Right? Because the update to the one conversation that we talked about here, which was how one of the school boards chose to not reopen their schools, or they chose to close some charter schools and not renew them. Now, the person who is the head of the state instruction, basically their superintendent, I think they call him a commissioner, he's going after that school board to undo what they did. So that's the war there.
Wow.
He doesn't want to let them close the school board, the charter schools. So Hillsborough is, the Hillsborough folks have not, Hillsborough, Brevard, and with all of the things going on in Florida. Florida is like a hotbed of activity.
Yeah, no kidding.
But follow Billy Townsend. Billy Townsend is very much worth your time.
Very good. Very good.
Right. And then I wanted to do a shout out to the city, to the collaboration between Contra Costa County, where we are, and the city of San Pablo and their library, the San Pablo Library, because they have put together an opportunity to expand access to hotspots and on being able to get online for families, and not just families, right? For anybody who doesn't have access. So just like really you take a book out, nowadays, the equivalent of a book is a hotspot.
Absolutely.
Right? If you don't have a hotspot at home, you are limited tremendously by what you're able to, the information you're able to access. So they have now done this in San Pablo, a community which is a lower income community in the Bay Area. A lot of other communities would never even think of it, but it makes total sense in San Pablo.
That's amazing. You know, could you, where would I find, I want to send that out to the Concilio network. So
I put it on Facebook. I'll put it on the Facebook
Perfect.
page.
Perfect. And I could send that out.
Yeah, it was a big shout out to them.
Shout out to them. That's wonderful. Good job. That's collaboration.
Right. And then the final one is in fact about the Concilio, and that is that in 2 weeks from today, Concilio Latino will be hosting Dr. Hurst, the new superintendent.
Superintendent, yes. And also, if people want to send in questions to us, and we got it on the Facebook page or whatever, so we can know, the kind of topics that people will have that they want to know about for the
about reopening, and maybe even about it's certainly social justice, what we just talked about. I'm sure Dr. Hurst has opinions on all of this.
And it's going to be translated into Spanish, and then there'll also be a Spanish session afterwards, all in Spanish, for discussion about about the meetings. So yeah, it's very accessible to the Spanish speaking community also. So very good.
So we're very excited about that, and I know that Dr. Hurst will be able to give us a lot of up-to-date information and some information about what his goals are for this community, because we have talked about how many people are leaving being a superintendent, but here he is coming and taking on a much bigger role than he had.
And we're also going to follow up on our testing forum. I know that at the county office, where we're talking about, I'm talking about the resolution about testing. So we're looking into that as well. So there'll be more about that.
There's more. I mean, what we're hopeful is that we don't just discuss things here, but we look for strategies to improve things, right? And to make things happen. And one of the strategies you can have as a political person is the resolutions. And that did come up in that in our testing webinar, that the next step is for folks to put resolutions before their boards, and then those boards have to take action.
Yep, that's it. So we'll talk
about
that. Yeah,
that's a big next step. So that's it for today. Wish you a very happy 4th of July weekend, and don't have any fireworks. Watch them on TV from some other faraway place. Yes, we can't have fireworks here. We're too fire endangered. But.
Oh gosh, right. Okay.
Okay, bye.